morning, good afternoon, good night. However you're watching, wherever you're watching, whenever you're watching, however you're listening, whenever you're listening. It is the Bet Online Salute Detroit podcast. We got the tripod here today. The Bearded Brothers is back. Jamal just shaved 2 minutes ago. Just to let you know, we were talking about that before. So his beard will be in by the end of the show. We're here on an exciting Wednesday. You guys will be watching this on Thursday. But we got a lot of big news that came through. We had a lot of visits, a lot of remembering what was going on, what was going down. We actually just talked about it the previous week with USCJ. We need depth in the quarterback room. SC had a quarterback on campus, and it looks like we got one signed. We got Maiava from UNLV. Very explosive. Believe it or not, for my Christmas party, I watched his conference championship game, and I was like, oh, he's not bad. Like, he's pretty good. It makes sense. If I'm not mistaken, he is a hometown kid, right? So he's coming back home, right? Or am I wrong on that one?
He's a Vegas kid. I think he was actually born in Hawaii, but grew up in Vegas. So,
there you go.
We'll claim him though. We call him hometown. That's fine.
Vegas is extended LA anyway. Like, so it really doesn't matter.
Exactly. He's the first Polynesian SC quarterback, which is very cool.
That's a big deal too. So that works out.
You know who should have been the first Polynesian USC quarterback?
Yeah.
Tua.
Tua.
Yeah, that was the one that got away. You know, that was the one that got away for because he was going to sign with Sark, and that's the one that got away.
Just wasn't a car dealership that wanted his parents, I guess.
Yeah.
And when you no longer can do that, you retire. But anyway, let's keep. I got it in. Yes. Let's keep moving forward. So we said we needed depth in the quarterback room. He was going to go to Georgia, committed to Georgia, last minute flip to decided to come to SC. I guess he went to Georgia, saw how cold it is in the winter, came here. It's cold for us, but he was like, I could deal with 65 in the winter. So that might have been it. Palm trees, beaches. Who knows what that is? At the end of the day, when you step on Figueroa, it's an immaculate campus. As soon as you step on, you get the aura. It's a different feeling. But we got a backup quarterback. We got a quarterback. Here's the most important part. God forbid something happens to Miller Moss. We got a quarterback that can get us through a game. Not only get us through a game, we have a quarterback that could get us through at least 2 to 3 games. And it changes Lincoln Riley's playbook, right? And that's the good thing about Lincoln Riley is his playbook for Miller Moss is not the same playbook for Caleb Williams, Jalen Hurts, Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray. So these two playbooks are going to be different between Jayden Maiava and Miller Moss. So him coming on the field, if there is an injury, knock on wood, God forbid, it's going to be different. So we are going to see some flash and change, but we have a solid foundation in the room. I don't think we're done. I do think we need to get one more to be safe, and that one more needs to come from high school, and we need to get that locked down within the next 3 weeks, right? The first Tuesday is about 3 or 4 weeks, for about a month from now. So we need to get that taken care of. Ryan, what is your opinion on this big get?
Well, first off, no intros. What's up, Coach?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No hellos. No, how are you? I mean, the Indian in me is deeply offended, Fred. Okay, you don't come back from that from an Indian household. Let me tell you that much right now. That ain't gonna fly with my parents.
No, an Italian household.
And it's Wednesday, so I'm a little thrown off. I'm an athlete, so I'm a creature of habit. And I normally say hello to you guys. Jamal, how are you doing?
Doing well. Thanks for the belated greeting, but I'll take it anyway. There's an asterisk by it, but doing well, Coach. Great to see you.
Ryan, how are you?
Yes, I'm good. I know it's Wednesday, so we never record Wednesdays, so it feels off. Hope you're well, but yeah, I mean, no, it's good just to dive right into it. So to me, this, and I can't remember if we brought him up on the last show or we talked about it offline, but I mean, to me, this was the perfect match for both player and program in the sense that, Maiava, talented kid, as you mentioned, Mountain West player of the year, over 3,000 yards. He's got some good pop in his arm. You could see some, in that championship game, or not necessarily the bowl game, but the Mountain West championship game against Boise, showed some good stuff. And, as a freshman, so 3 to 4 years of eligibility left. And so he can come in and sit behind Miller, but also push Miller Moss for that starting job. I mean, he's going to come in and compete and want to win that starting job. So he'll have that, I think, opportunity. But if he doesn't win it, which I think at this point, we don't think he will because of what Miller Moss did and how this team rallied around him, he's got plenty of eligibility to, if Miller balls out, goes to the draft next year, well, then he becomes the main man until, if Julian Lewis does stay committed to SC and comes in 25 or 26, you have a true starter that's been in the program for at least a year. So it was great for him coming to a great program and a undoubted best coach when it comes to quarterback productivity and getting to the NFL, and is great for SC and getting a guy that's young, that's talented, that started an entire season as a freshman and now can kind of learn the ropes under Lincoln. So, I mean, to me, this was as good as a signing as they could get in terms of transfer portal QB for now.
Jamal, even though I'm not welcome back into your household, what do you think?
No, Coach, absolutely. I totally agree with Ryan. I think there's some on the field dimensions, and I think there's some off the field dimensions. And I think with the on the field dimensions, again, his style fits the Lincoln Riley system in terms of being able to unlock all the tools, right? You mentioned it, Fred. I mean, 6'4", 220. Ryan talked about the pop in his arm. He's also quite the athlete as well from a mobility standpoint. And when you talk about the numbers as a freshman, over 3,000 yards, 17 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, definitely some quality starts, some quality experiences behind him with the right tutelage. I think you can see him grow really well. The ideal QB2 to Miller Moss, the guy that's going to kind of push him in the spring. But I think ultimately Miller Moss will win this job and have his team for the 24 season. And then I think it's the off the field that's so interesting here as well. When you talk about taking the visit with USC, looked like USC was in pole position. And then out of nowhere, early in the week, he says, hey, I'm going to Georgia. I'm committed. And that looked like a locked-on deal. And then his nil representative broke the story that he's actually flipped back from Georgia to USC. So just the wild world of modern college football that we live in, that does seem like there was kind of a bidding war behind the scenes, and ultimately SC got their guy to get that much needed depth. So I think this is a really nice get for Lincoln Riley and USC, fortifying that position. Hey, does he stay for 3 or 4 years at USC? Who knows? But for now, you've got the depth in place for 2024 in exactly the way you want it.
And depth was exactly what they needed. I don't think they're fully there at depth yet, but at least they're making the right steps. I will say this, and Jamal, you're the biggest advocate of this too. Like, they need to start making moves, and we were talking about that. I think one live, like close to the end of the season, like things need to start happening, and then it triggered both of us when he's like, "I'm now motivated." We're seeing the motivation. You know what I mean? Sure. Like the motivation is actually there, and he's making the right steps. So, excuse me. Like right now, everything's going in the right place. I will say this though. I saw a picture the other day, and I saw a small kid in the picture. All the kids look good, and I saw a small kid, and I'm like, I don't know how I feel about this one. I don't know who it was.
What are you trying to say, Coach? What are you trying to say? I'm a small kid.
Yeah, but you were a receiver. We'll take a small receiver. If you could catch and go, I'll take you all day. But it looks like this kid's going 3-point stance, and it's not. He wasn't big enough.
Fred, I got to ask you, how much of it do you think is this sort of old school SC Letterman's jacket that all these kids are in? You know, some of them, got the shirt on, the sweatshirt on. Some of them are shirtless. The next guy we're talking about, Bolt. I mean, he went shirtless with the Letterman's jacket. But how much of it is kind of this baggy, heavy, old school Letterman's jacket that's the look right now,
I actually like the Letterman's jacket look. Yeah. I actually, so I'll give you a story, believe it or not. They just changed the rule to stop the photo shoots and the pictures and the whole stadium thing. They changed that rule and did not let us do it. So it was an extra benefit. And so like, I never got a chance to do it. And then they brought it back with the whole NIL thing and the visits. And so I'm happy they're able to do it, because when you go and they do that, it's like, okay, like it's like Blue Chip. If you remember the movie Blue Chip, like, it feels like I'll be here. I belong here. And it's just different hearing it at the Coliseum. You know what I mean? And it's also different, like, if you do it at UCLA, it's different hearing it in the Rose Bowl. Like, there's more to it. Probably Michigan, too, and Ohio State, and Penn State, and Florida State. Texas, like you hear it and it's not like, oh, like it's just a stadium. You hear it and then all of a sudden, like you get the feeling of the history behind it. Like I'm at the Coliseum, it's 100 years old. I'm at the Rose Bowl. This is by far where they play the best bowl game out of all the bowl games. This is the bowl game. Like it's different when you have that behind it. So I'm happy they get to do that. I'm happy they get to do the photo shoots because at the end of the day, and you called this again, they're kids. Right? So they're enjoying doing that stuff. Like they're kids and they're having fun and you get to see them be kids. Like, and so like, it's their time where they're letting their hair down. They get to do whatever pose they want to do and get to post it on their social media and do their big post and makes them happy. Right. And it's like, all right, I'm going to SC. Y'all like what I did? Perfect. So I like it a lot. I really enjoy it. Like I'm a big advocate for it. I have no problem with it at all. I love it. And I hope they never get rid of it. It gets weird. You know, the suits in Indiana, they get weird. In Indianapolis, they get weird sometimes. So moving forward on the transfer portal, when I was watching the national championship, I thought to myself, this is the best team in the Pac-12, and they're getting crushed up front by Michigan. Like Lincoln Riley needs to get big up front, and he needs to get fast and physical soon because that offensive line was big and moving fast. That defensive coordinator deserves a head coaching job, even though he took the job in the middle of the year. Whatever scheme that is, that blitz package, I want to sit with that man and talk football with him for 3 days and learn that blitz package and the stunts and the movement that he does. I'm in love with that defense. That defense is amazing. And it also shows good defense wins championships because that offense is subpar. But anyway, neither here nor there. They were getting smashed on both sides of the ball. So my first thought was like, man, we got to get way bigger up front, and we got to get moving fast. We need to go back to those SC days with big dudes that move fast. Next thing you know, pops up in the portal. We get big rank, 6'2", 310, right? Played in the SEC. That dude, I watched a little bit of his film. That dude could move. It's a different movement than the last guy that we got at Texas A&M. This dude is moving. The only thing I'm worried about is that he's a senior, right? And then that's the thing that we picked up on, and the thing that we talked about is that we're going to get these one-year rentals and they don't instill the culture, right? So hopefully the new leader of the team, like Miller Moss, right? And you got like people who's been there, and hopefully Tahj Washington is still around working out and taking care of those things. They instill that culture in Raikes and understands like this isn't just a stop. You're at SC. If you come and do this right, you'll be a Trojan for life. You know what I mean? Like this one year at USC makes you a Trojan for the rest of your life. You come and do this right, and you play. And I know he didn't get a lot of reps. He kind of got lost in the wash at Texas A&M. That's fine, and that's what the portal is for. But hopefully in this new defense with Lynn, it makes everything different for him, and he has an outstanding season. On top of that, he may just be a depth guy to build depth and get through it. So I just hope he's not a rental player, and he's a committed player and wants to come and play and make a change. What do you think, Jamal?
No, I totally agree with you, Fred. What I really like is it's bulk on the interior. 320 pounds. The guy's agile. You take Isaiah Raikes, 17 tackles last year. Many tackle for loss, 7.5, I believe, 1 sack. And then you pair him with Bear Alexander, and now you've got 2 anchors on the interior of that defensive line. And then you add an Nate Clifton, who's also a transfer from Vanderbilt, bigger guy. And now you have kind of a 3-man rotation there in terms of that defensive line that you can then pair with the returning linebackers. And you're really starting to round out a front 7 for D'Anton Lynn that's beginning to resemble with the same size and speed as he had at UCLA this year. And then his scheme could really thrive, that Ravens scheme, quote unquote. So I think this is absolutely the right move. I think you reiterated it. Look, Washington, Ryan, you've mentioned, is sort of built similarly to USC in a lot of ways, right? It's want to get out and run and be very vertical, have playmakers on the outside, be opportunistic defensively. Well, we just found out that doesn't quite work against, an elite team in the trenches like Michigan. USC gave up 52 points to Washington. Michigan gave up 13 points to Washington. So there's a long way to go there in terms of ability to be defensive-minded, to be tough in the trenches, to tackle, to block. And I think guys like Raikes and guys like Clifton are really the right building blocks and reinforce the fact that Lincoln Riley said we want to go out after very large human beings, and Raikes is certainly fits in that mold as a very large and agile human being.
Ryan, what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was a great get. I mean, just the size. The dude played running back in high school, which is insane.
At 320. I mean, that's crazy, right?
Freaking bowling ball as a running back. I mean, he gives Maurice Jones-Drew a bad name as a bowling ball. But yeah, I mean, I think the fact too, there's some people point to the fact that he was kind of a spot starter or a rotational guy as a flag, but it also could be pointed as he's got a lot of tread still left. And if he needs to come in and kind of be that anchor on the defensive line with Bear Alexander, he should have a lot of juice and a lot of, spring to his step because he wasn't overused at Texas A&M. So it's a great get. We knew, Coach, and I know you mentioned it, but we knew that there were going to be some transfer portal guys that were going to be 1-year rentals, that they were that's the name of the game. They're going to have to do it. So this is one of them. But that in their 24 class, with guys like Carlin Banks and Jayed Abasari, these are guys now that can learn behind Bear and Isaiah Raikes and hopefully, kind of get bigger as they get older. But this was a necessary get to go up against these Big Ten offensive lines, and he's got SEC experience, which I think is very good. We saw how good Bear Alexander was after what he did in the SEC at Georgia and coming over here to play in the Pac-12, which was the best conference, but has been known as not being the biggest in the trenches. So getting guys of that ilk and experience was great. So, I mean, it was a must get, and it was a great get, and they were able to, finalize it and get it done. So keep heading in the right direction. Keep making moves.
Yeah, definitely. And just to put people at ease, USC has never struggled with a Big Ten team in the history of their football. They pretty much have the highest winning Rose Bowl record, and they play Big Ten schools. SC went to Ohio State, beat Ohio State twice in the past. I know it's a pass them all. Don't drop the stats. I'm just putting people at ease. I want to put people at ease right now. We're in the off season. We'll save it for August. Save it for August.
Absolutely.
We'll
Fred, it's 8 months off. Okay, don't worry. It's all good. Off-season madman's a different madman.
I got you. I can see it calculating. Like, wait, hold on, but yeah, I will just put them at ease with that. Moving forward, so today, headlines hit. Actually, I was at work on a job walk away from my phone. I come back, and I should have took a screenshot of this. I had 100 notifications on my phone of text messages.
Well, aren't you special? I mean, what a flex there on the radio.
Most of them. Okay, I'll fix it. Most of them were from group chats, and most of them were from Slack. So put it like that. So it didn't come from a bunch.
You didn't have to verify. You could have just ran.
You didn't know. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, and some of them were from teammates, and teammates I still talk to. But Pete Carroll was let go from the Seahawks. And so we talked about this before, how to go, and I kind of want to steer the conversation. Let's steer the conversation this way. Pete Carroll's one of 2 coaches who won a Super Bowl and a national championship. He's 3. Who's the third one? I'm sorry.
So Jimmy, Pete, Switzer.
Okay. 1 of 3 coaches who won a national championship. I apologize. But he's also transformed programs everywhere he's been. Even when he was in New England, he was still pretty decent. When he was with the Jets, he wasn't too bad, right? And then he had some time. He even said in his press conference today, might have to take some time off, learn a bunch of new stuff, reamp this thing, and I'll be back. So he's ready to go and he's ready to come back. But my question for you is, Pete a Hall of Famer? And not just a Hall of Famer. Does Pete go to both Hall of Fames? I'll start with Ryan.
Oh, man. I feel like college, yes. I know it was a shorter stint, but he orchestrated one of the greatest college football dynasties ever, one of the greatest teams ever. So I would say yes. Pro, man, it'd be hard to keep him out, what he did and going to 2 Super Bowls and all the success he had in Seattle. I'm trying to think of all the recent coaches or lack thereof that have or haven't got in. I'll go pro. I'll go no, but just barely. Not that I don't want him to get in, but I just feel like it maybe needed to do a little more. I don't know though. That's a tough question. What do you think, Jamal?
No, we'll start with the easy one. College is a no-brainer. I mean, We just got to refresh everyone's memory here. He was 9 years at USC. First year was a rebuild. Last year, it was a little bit tough on the rebuild. Those middle 7, 7 consecutive top 5 finishes. 6-1 in BCS games at the time. Obviously, the 2 national championships, the opportunity to play for a third, 34-game winning streak, 4 Rose Bowls, 2 Orange Bowls. He did in 7 years what most coaches do in 30. So there's no question in my mind he is not only a Hall of Fame college football coach, but one of the 10 or 12 greatest college football coaches to have ever lived. And so that's an easy one. On the pro side, I got to be honest with you, I think he's in as well. I mean, when you talk, how many coaches get the opportunity to be able to play in 2 consecutive Super Bowls? He won one, arguably should have won the second. And then obviously, had a great run with Seattle. The game that sort of put him on the map, remember, was the beast mode run, if you recall. That first year they were 7-9 and kind of got into the playoffs in a weak divisional situation. And the Saints were the defending champions at the time, in that wild card game. And that beast mode run put him on the map. Obviously, the Legion of Boom team. And then just his ability to constantly kind of reinvent himself with Russell Wilson, with Geno Smith. So to me, I think there's no question that he's a Hall of Famer in both sports. The one thing I will say is there was a similar narrative arc with Pete at USC and Pete with the Seahawks, because he built USC into an iconic dynasty, won a few championships, one play. He was one play away. That Lendale 4th and 2. Everyone remembers the Vince 4th and 6. But the reality is it was Lendale 4th and 2 that was the one that was going to cap off that national championship. Lendale getting stuffed. SC, he never could get back to the national championship game after that in this sort of tragic poetry. And very similarly, building up Seattle, winning that first Super Bowl, and then, of course, not handing the ball off to Marshawn Lynch, one play away from repeating, and then could never kind of get back to the Super Bowl and have a real great run at it. So there's this poetic tragedy and that mirrors itself with USC and the Seahawks. Can you imagine if he just executes those 3 yards, the 1 yard for Marshawn Lynch and the 2 yards for Lendale White? You're talking about 3 consecutive college championships in the modern era and back-to-back Super Bowls, and this isn't even a conversation, and so that's how close the margins are. But for me, even with his body of work, I think it's yes for both.
I would say yes for both, but I don't think he's a first ballot for the NFL. I think he'll have to wait and he'll be on the back end. But yes for both without a doubt. I played for Pete, and just the stuff that he talked about and the way he got people to buy into his program, you instantly bought in from. It's all about the ball, to where he gives the freshman the ball, and we have to protect the ball throughout the whole camp, to just the better teams play better for longer periods of time. Only 3 rules. We only have 3 rules. Always protect the team, be early, no whining, no complaining, no excuses. Just him being open, always have an open door policy. Him letting the coaches go on Halloween so the kids could go trick-or-treating. Having family day, just being a part of everything. Being a part of his culture. Even with my culture, I adapt some of that stuff that he takes with him. Like being at his house, he invited us over to his house to have a dinner with the whole team, right? He took us to Knoxbury Farm, rented the whole park just for us in camp so we could have a break, and did things like that. It's kind of remarkable what he did, because you look at it from this standpoint, and I'll end it on this. He got fired from New England, and Belichick replaced him. And you kind of think about, if Kraft would have kept him, it might have been the same result, right? But also, for somebody to go and sit back and say, what did I do wrong, and not play the victim? And he went and rechanged his whole style and did all this research and figured out what he did and how to make a great program. And it actually worked. It's amazing. For him to just be at his daughter's volleyball game and get the job is incredible. And he already had that plan. He's like, yes, my plan finally worked. I can finally put my plan to work to see if it actually works. So it's just amazing.
Coach, if I may add just one thing to piggyback on those amazing comments, 2 things kind of come to mind. One is, to your point, destiny is a thing. It's a real thing, because you talk about both sides of that destiny, right? Where, hey, if he stayed at New England, maybe it's him and Brady for 20 years and the similar things happen. But sometimes things happen for a reason. And let's not forget, Pete Carroll was USC's 6th choice for head coach back in 2001.
Yep.
The fact, Mike Bellotti was number 1 at the time, went through a list, couldn't get their guy, and it was their 6th choice that basically architected the modern era of USC football. And so destiny is a real thing. And the second thing I'll say, Coach, to your point about building culture, building pillars, kind of building a philosophy, you and I love to have fun, in a brotherly way in terms of LA Football Network and all the teams. He attributes, who does he attribute?
John Wooden.
Building a culture, a philosophy, the Wizard of Westwood, Coach John Wooden. So he learned some things from UCLA to be able to build USC football into a modern dynasty. So I got to throw that one in there for you, man.
No, 100%. You got it. Everybody listening on the Mightier 1090, we appreciate you. Thank you. If you want to go and get in on this playoff action, go to betonline.ag, put in promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, receive a 50% welcome bonus. Thanks again for listening. I remember when I was a freshman, and I think it was John McKay. It might have been John McKay. He might have still been alive at the time when Pete first started coaching at SC, and he took all the coaches and took them out to his house way out somewhere in the desert. I don't know if it was Palm Springs or something like that. And John McKay explained to them the culture of USC and what it takes to be a part of USC. And Pete said he took that to heart. And if the coaches wasn't on board, he would have got rid of that coach. But all the coaches were on board, and they took it to heart with recruiting and everything like that. I tell you this story because Pete's now available, and Pete's on the free agent market. And I don't know if there's bad blood between USC and Pete Carroll, but whatever that is, it's time for Jen to step in, and she needs to fix that bad blood with Pete Carroll and USC. Even Dr. Folk needs to fix that bad blood because Lincoln Riley and his staff needs to go to Manhattan, and Pete needs to tell them, do the same thing that John McKay did with his staff. I think, and I say this all the time, and I know it might sound crazy, but the little things matter for programs to be successful. And you look at Texas, they don't lose their tradition. Oklahoma, Michigan. I was surprised Michigan came out in all blue for the national championship. And I told my wife, I was like, oh, the alumni is going to be pissed. They don't have the maize pants on. Like, they should have won this one in the traditional uniforms, but they went all blue. I don't know how they're going to feel about that one. But if they win, it settles everything. But there's going to be some complaints. But at the end of the day, like, those things matter. The banner's still there for Michigan. The horseshoe will always live in Ohio State. Dot in the I, right? The Penn State whiteouts. Like, no names on the back of the jerseys. SC would never have a name on the back of the jersey because nobody's bigger than the logo, right? They need to bridge that gap, and they need to bring Pete back and make him a cultural liaison or something like that. And they need to have that retreat. And Pete's a partier too, so they can have fun also. But they need to have those retreats because the culture is still missing. And I think, like you said, destiny. You can't control destiny. And there's a culture issue. And I think Pete is the guy that could bridge that one gap just like that to put SC back to where they need to be. I'm going to go to Jamal first. What do you think about that?
No, Coach, I mean, I think you said it really well. And I think what, you talk about in the spirit of learning and continuous improvement and growth, and so much of what Pete said in his press conference about reinventing himself yet again. And, that's something that Nick Saban has also done. And I know we'll talk about that later. To me, I think this is an opportunity for Lincoln Riley to show that he is trying to reinvent himself and learn by bringing Pete in. Because I'll tell you, he had that at OU with Bob Stoops. Bob Stoops kind of played the John McKay role for Lincoln Riley at OU in terms of setting things up, succession plan, in terms of kind of establishing what the OU kind of history is. And he scoffed at that, right? He turned his back on it. He went somewhere else kind of in the middle of the night. And so this is an opportunity for him to acknowledge, hey, the game isn't just won with X's and O's, with play calls, and just with, kind of robotic movements on the field. Culture matters, relationships matter, building an organization matters. And so I think it would be a tremendous step in that direction to bring Pete forward and bring him in this role as a cultural liaison, an ambassador, sort of USC's version of Matthew McConaughey, if you will, right? The minister of culture that McConaughey likes to call himself for UT and Austin FC and all of that. Who better than Pete Carroll with his incredible energy, his incredible spirit, not only to build culture in the program, but also to be a fundraiser for alumni and boosters and folks connected with the university to sort of promote the new facilities, to be able to bring a nil endowment, to be able to bring resources and strategic partnerships in this new world of college football. So it'd be a tremendous opportunity. Now, I think having said that, I think there's two issues here and two roadblocks to be able to make that completely happen. The first for me is, I think there is, I don't want to call it bad blood, Fred, but I hear where you're coming from, but there is certainly a distance between Pete Carroll and USC. Even in the times that he's been asked about USC since 2009, since leaving, and can you believe it's been 14 years since Pete's been gone? He's always sort of answered the question as, hey, I'm so far removed from that place. I don't know what's going on. He hasn't necessarily made that effort to stay engaged with USC, stay in touch. And I think it's a two-way street. I don't think the university has done enough. And I don't think he's necessarily had this desire to sort of stay connected, given how things sort of played out with the sanctions and leaving and what have you. So I think, number one, does he want to kind of come back full circle to a place that meant so much to him at the time, but he was always kind of more in a pro mindset that I'm going to come to college to reinvent myself, but ultimately the destination is professional football again, much in the way I think Jim Harbaugh is thinking right now. Number two, I think the issue comes down to how much is in the tank. And he's 72 years old, and he made it a point in the press conference to say, I have so much ready, so much energy and so much willingness and so much fire and so much left to prove that I'm going to kind of take some time to reflect, but I want to get back out there. And so I don't necessarily see him saying, hey, at 72, I'm done. I'm just kind of a director of leadership. I'm a minister of culture, and I'm going to fundraise for another guy to be able to get success, to just kind of play this sort of sideline figure for someone else to go and get success. I think there's a lot more in the tank here. And I think for him to feel fulfilled, I think there's going to be either a head coaching job or potentially a general manager job. But I think it's going to be something much more hands-on than just being kind of a liaison for USC. Do I think in an ideal world it would be a perfect fit? Absolutely. But I don't think reality is going to be the case just because, A, I think he's still very much in that NFL mindset, and B, I think he still has so much energy that he wants to kind of go and prove it one more time.
Yeah, I think if they do some type of thing for him this year during the SC game, I think you'll get a sellout, guaranteed. Just
for
like
sure.
That. Pete Carroll Day, you get a sellout. Ryan, I know you said Lincoln Riley made a big deal about trying to bring people back, and I just mentioned, so do you think that you're in a lot of his press conference? Do you think that fits with what Lincoln Riley's trying to accomplish with bringing back players and bringing back old people from the past culture? How do you think Pete fits in with this? You'll have the best mindset because you've heard Lincoln Riley talk.
Well, it would be a home run and beneficial to everyone, to Lincoln. I don't think it's any mystery that Lincoln doesn't love talking to boosters and NIL, and he's a football coach, right? And I think Pete has that gravitas and he's great at football coaching also, but he's such a good mouthpiece for the university. And he was that's what made him so great, and reaching out to all the kind of the celebrities of LA and inviting him in. And that's just not necessarily who Lincoln Riley is. It's just a different personality. And so someone like Pete could kind of bridge that gap in a way that could do that. And it would just be such a great synergy, I think, that they could build off each other, and obviously Lincoln learn a lot. So because I agree with Jamal, if this were to happen, it would be, I think, a rental, whether it's a year or 2 years. It wouldn't be much more than that, because it seems like he definitely wants to coach. And I'm sure with 7 NFL openings, there's going to be teams that call him. And I know Seattle and the ownership said that they're keeping him on as an advisor, but if he gets offered a job, he's going to take that and not just stick as an advisor. So I think it'll probably be a rental, but why not get him back in the culture? Put him in charge of NIL for a year. The money's going to flow in with Pete Carroll at all the booster events and the dinners and at, out at crypto.com and stuff. So I think that'd be, it'd be great for, I think, all parties, in my opinion. The interesting and maybe how the way this would happen, if it did, I'm not saying it will, but the way it would is when you look at Jen Cohen, new AD, she started at Washington in 98, not as the AD yet. She was an assistant at them, but all the way back in 98 before Pete even joined USC in 01. And then she was there obviously till 23. And so, over that time, I'm not saying I know that they know each other well, but it's pretty obvious that when you work in the same city in the sports industry, you're going to meet. Seattle played at Husky Stadium from 2002-1. So there's connections with the Seattle Seahawks and the Washington Huskies and whatnot. So I wonder if she'd have any pull or sway and maybe some past relationship, whether it's with Pete directly or just with inner circles of his with Seattle that could, open the conversation more, because it wasn't past SC when he left, if there was any quote unquote bad blood or whatever. So it'd be great. It'd probably be a rental, but I mean, just how much fun would it be to have the Monarchs back on campus?
No, that'd be exciting to have the Monarchs back. Well, eventually the Monarchs will get retired, or they're going to become the Pete Carroll Monarchs, but that'll be great to have Pete Carroll back. News was just popping today. So another story that came out, Nick Saban decided to call it quits, right? And I don't know how to address this because I have my feelings towards the way things go. A lot of people are saying it's NIL. He can't adapt. I can't take away from his success on the field because he has won multiple national championships and things like that. And he's done a great job as a coach. But I do believe that he can't keep up because he can't pay players anymore now that everybody else is paying players. I don't know if that's true or not. That's just my opinion. And I've always stated on that opinion. And if you listen to me, you know how I feel about SEC and their past and history, things like that. But I also think that somewhere in the back of my mind, when I was thinking about this drive home today, Nick wants a shot at the NFL again. There's 7 opportunities open. I think Nick wants a shot at the NFL. I think he's making it easier for him to be an NFL coach because he no longer has to get bought out. He's retired. His papers are in. He doesn't have to buy out the Alabama. They don't have to buy out the Alabama contract. They can go fresh start. I think this is an opportunity, and I think this is his way to make a clean break from Alabama and try at the NFL. I think this is the best way for him to do it, and I think this is his game plan. I could be wrong. So I would like to see it. I want to see his success at the NFL, but the only thing that worries me is that system is a little bit outdated. The Belichick type system in the NFL is not really working anymore, and they kind of have that same system, and we see it. Josh McDaniels and Dan Patricia. The only person who has had success is he was in Miami, and he got fired, and he should have not got fired.
Brian Flores.
Brian Flores. There you go. Brian Flores. Thank you. Brian Flores, he had some success, and he had Tua early, and they were winning a little bit. That fire was questionable. But I do think he's trying to get an NFL. I think this is his chance so teams don't have to buy him out, and there's not a lot of contract negotiations. So Nick Saban retires, one of the best to do it. We have probably two of the best coaches in this era out of the game right now. It's the turning of the guard. For me, it kind of sucks because I wish I wasn't coaching because it gives me opportunity. I wish I had the opportunity. Like, all right, those guys are leaving. Like, I wish I was still in it to be able to be a part of this, so I could at least get my shot now. But it is what it is. I still love my life. No regrets. Things happen for a reason. But two of the best coaches in our era are now out of the game. Bill's going to stay in it because of his contract. He's going to trade. But it's just crazy to see. So, Ryan, I'm going to pass it to you. Nick Saban's gone. What's your opinion on it? What do you think about him going pro? And how do you feel? Do you think this is a changing of the guard with coaching football?
Yeah, look at that. 3 or 4 questions in one. All right.
It's three. I'll walk you through them if you need help.
Yeah, I might. I'll call back on you. No, I mean, what a great coach. What he did. I don't think, especially now with NIL, it will ever be replicated. And, did probably a whole different podcast going into what maybe they did in the SEC in Alabama to help expedite that, but that's a whole different conversation. Either way, you look at his winning, you look at his championships, you look at the SEC titles. I mean, I don't think it will ever be replicated, especially with this new transfer portal NIL era. It was unfair anyway to compare to him because of how great he is, and now it's almost impossible with what you have to go up against to get to that. So, what he did, he'll go down, in my opinion, as the greatest college coach of all time. And it's hard to argue against that just purely based on the winning. NFL wise, I mean, hey, that'd be interesting. I don't see it. I think personally, not only because of his age, but also the way he left the NFL the first time, basically, spurning Miami, saying he was back and then leaving in the middle of the night to go back to college and kind of screwing them over. NFL, as everyone knows here, is a close-knit club, it's the boys club. And I think they probably all talk, and it'd be hard to see him maybe get another chance at that, especially now at his age. However, we've seen coaches like Josh McDaniels, like Adam Gase get multiple chances who probably should never got another opportunity to coach again. So I'll never say never. I don't know if that will be the case. But hey, if all it takes is that one call for an interview and then all of a sudden the rumors and everything gets rolling. So it would certainly be interesting. I'm curious. I wonder where his best fit would be. Maybe we can talk about that on another podcast too. But and then changing the guard, yeah, absolutely. Him, and then we didn't even mention, Jim Harbaugh. If he goes to the NFL, I mean, you have two of the premier, argue top 5 college coaches not coaching college anymore. So huge changing of the guard, and it shows that this new college football is going to change everything, including the guys that have coached for a long time. And you either get with it and kind of adapt to it. You try to go against the grain and stick with your old stuff, or you say, you know what, we had a good run and this isn't for me anymore. So I'm not saying he did that necessarily, but that's just kind of the opportunity or the decision you have as a coach. So great coach, great career. The dominoes that are going to come from this are going to be unbelievable. I mean, they now have a 30-day window at Alabama to decide if they want to transfer out. We've already seen the 5-star receiver re-enter the or decommit, I should say.
2 people decommitted.
Yeah, decommitted
Ryan
already.
Williams won, and yep.
Yeah, the number 2 overall receiver, whatever. And so, we're going to see a huge domino effect. Coaching is going to change. Obviously, everyone talk about Dan Lanning being linked to him. There's been Kalen DeBoer has been thrown out there. Dabo Swinney has been thrown out, which I don't think that's a fit for Alabama, but whatever that looks like. So it's going to be a lot of dominoes falling because of this one. That's for sure. Was that all 3 questions?
Yeah. All right. I have another one. Damani Jackson. Just remind me of Damani Jackson after Jamal goes.
Well, the Domani Jackson meme is that Saban found out he got Domani Jackson and decided to retire. So, so that was the Domani Jackson joke, just in good fun there. Fred, in terms of your questions, look, it's the undisputed greatest coach in the history of college football. I mean, I don't think there's any conversation there in that regard, with the 7 national championships, 6 at Alabama in 17 years. It's sort of poetic that both Nick Saban and Pete Carroll go out on the same day, both 72 years old, and they both go out on the same day because they have been, in many ways, the 2 seminal figures in college football in the 21st century. Look, Pete started in 01. His first great year at SC was 02. When was Pete's last great USC year? 08. When was Saban's first national championship at Alabama? 09. I mean, it's been a seamless run from, the early 2000s till today with these 2 guys, with unquestionably, in my mind, the 2 great dynasties in college football in the 21st century. I think what he's done is not going to be replicated, not necessarily because of rule changes or era changes. I just think it's damn hard to win 7 national championships. I think the sport of college football, I think it's the hardest championship to win. And the fact that he was able to win it 7 times, go to 10 national championship games, is nothing short of sensational. I think at 72 years old, I think this was his best coaching job of his entire career, taking this Alabama team, taking this Alabama quarterback, developing them over the course of the season, and taking them all the way to the college football semifinal. And let's be honest, I mean, that Michigan game went into overtime, could have gone either way. The Michigan guy, caught the punt at the 1-yard line, got hit. That ball almost came out. That ball comes out. Alabama wins the game. I mean, it was that close to potentially playing for another national championship and winning it. So to me, this is almost the perfect way for him to go out because he's had so much success. I think the difference between him and Pete is I think Pete feels like he's still got to prove something because I think Pete hasn't had a great last few years as a coach. And I think he wants to show that he can kind of go out on the high note. When you're talking about Nick Saban, you're talking about a guy who's going on the ultimate high note, no question about it. And so, look, is there opportunities? I know we love to talk about SEC and, the paying of the players, even, pre-nil days and, whatever it takes to win. But Fred, that's kind of the kettle, sort of, calling coffee black, right? When we're talking about it as USC guys. I mean, Rodney Peete famously said, hey, I took a pay cut when I went to the pros from USC. So USC's been paying players for decades. So we can't play the integrity card here. Everyone's trying to do what they can to win. So I find it a little laughable that, we're kind of making fun of the SEC paying players given just everyone's history.
The only difference is when we got caught, we get in trouble. When they get caught, they don't get in trouble. That's
fair.
The only
That's
difference.
Fair. That's totally fair. Absolutely. But everybody was doing it, and so that shouldn't be held against him in any way, shape, or form. What a run. And I think the thing that I'll always remember about Nick Saban is his ability to reinvent himself. And when you talk about those first 3 Alabama national championships being of the ilk of this Michigan team, Fred, in the trenches, tough, defensive, running back oriented, and then the last 3 national championships having offensive coordinators like Kiff and like Sark, and having quarterbacks like Tua and Mac Jones and Jalen Hurts, and throwing the ball all over the yard, and having receivers, like Judy and Devonta Smith and Amari Cooper and, you Waddle and you name them. So I think his ability to reinvent himself is absolutely sensational. And I think this is the right time for him. This was his best coaching job. And I think the game is changing. And I don't think that it's, hey, I'm afraid of change or what have you. I think sometimes it's ultimate self-awareness to say I'm 72 years old and the game is headed to a new era. And it's a young person's game. It's a young man's game. You need someone younger, a little bit more energy, a little bit more culturally relatable to the Gen Zs and the millennials of today, the Gen Alphas now. We're in that kind of stage. So I think it's just sort of the natural test of time. I equate what he's done a lot with what Coach K did at Duke. Coach K's ability to sort of reinvent himself with the one and done rule and sort of get to a point of nil and be able to hand it off. So the toast of the town here with Nick Saban as the greatest football coach of all time. And it really kind of cements that we're headed to a new era in college football. And my goodness, between Harbaugh potentially going to the Chargers, the Alabama job opening, I mean, we're going to see a tectonic shift in terms of coaches and that coaching carousel over the next few weeks that is going to be hard to sort of look back historically in terms of replicate. The Lannings, the DeBoers, look, let's not play naive. Lincoln Riley's going to get a phone call as well. So I think there's going to be a conversation there about the nil money at Alabama and the nil money potentially at LSU compared to the nil money at USC. So I think we have to sort of be ready for any and all changes moving forward. But I think it's going to be an incredible next few weeks here of how the landscape of coaching changes. But hats off to Saban. I think some interesting coaching dominoes, Fred, when it comes to Harbaugh. If Harbaugh, we're LA-centric. Harbaugh goes to the Chargers. Michigan job opens up. I know there's a lot of conversation potentially about Brian Kelly going to Michigan, given he's more of a Midwest guy than a South guy. Notre Dame, Michigan, there's a lot of similarities there. And then lo and behold, the LSU job opens up. Does Kalen DeBoer get the LSU job? Does Lincoln Riley get the LSU job? I mean, I think there's just so many things that can happen from here on out. So it's going to be fun for us. It's going to be an interesting time here.
I will say this. And you made a very great point, Jamal. He just knew when it was time. And I don't think he had anything, because you could say, he couldn't keep up with NIL. Well, he was in the playoff last year. He was in the playoff this year. He's been in the playoff for the past 3-4 years since they had NIL. So he was able to keep up with NIL. I just think he woke up this morning and was like, I'm over it. You know what I mean? Sometimes you wake up and you say, I'm done. And I think this was a time for him to say, I'm done. A lot of people forget that these are human beings. You know what I mean? Like they forget that as human beings. He probably has grandkids, and right now let's just give him 20 more years to live, right? And that's a stretch for 72 years old, right? But 20 more, he'll live until 92 years old. At least in those 20 years, he can see his grandkids grow up. He could spend time with his kids that he doesn't get to spend time with, because people don't understand the whole spring you're on the road. The whole summer, from middle summer all the way until now, you're doing something football related. Like, you don't get family time. I think he's like, I just want time. So, and he has that house by the lake. He'd probably just go live in his lake house, but I think he just woke up and was like, it's time. Like, you know what I mean? I don't think it had anything to do with keeping up or the game changer, things like that. I think he would adjust to it because he was good enough to do it. I just think today was the day he probably looked at his wife and said, you know, I'm done. I'm gonna go turn it in, and it's time for us to hang out. You guys agree? Disagree?
Yeah. Good. I mean, I think it. Yeah. No, I think it. I don't know how coaches do it, man. I don't know how you have a family at all, and so well deserved. And we're sitting here at 8:20, and I feel guilty leaving my family. So I don't know how coaches are on the road for 9 months a year.
I will tell you this: I got lucky because I have a military brat. So she understood, right? And then she was coaching softball. She coached softball for 2 years. So there's times where she was on the road playing and I was on the road recruiting. So like we understood it and we got the game, and like just she grew up in athletics. I grew up in athletics. We got it and we understood the concept. But you have to, this could be a whole different show, but this is one thing you have to, when you make your day, like this is our day, you make it your day. You know what I mean? And like you said it, you set that day. This is our day. I had to learn I'm gonna be home at 8:00. I had to learn to stop saying I will be home at 8:00 because 8:00 will lead to 11:30, and she made dinner because she expected to have dinner with me. Like, you know what I mean? Like it got to the point to where like I don't know when I'll be home. Or when I'm home early, like, hey, I'm coming home early. I'll be home early today. Like you have to be very communicative and open, because if you give absolutes, it leads to disappointment. Open-ended at least gives you an idea. You know what I'm saying? So those are like the tricks that I learned. Like when you have the time spending with her, you know what I mean? So
which is so funny. I was just gonna say, which is so funny because when you're actually coaching, like you have to live in absolutes. Like it can't be open-ended. So the job is absolute. The off the field is open-ended.
Right.
So well said, Fred. Absolutely. And I think we should all be striving in a certain extent to be, have a version of life like Nick Saban. I mean, we should be celebrating him for making that decision, of giving, Fred, you said it, 20 years. I agree with you. That might be a stretch. I think it's probably more like 15 years of quality life. And, you want to be able to spend that with your loved ones. He's the greatest coach of all time. There's nothing to prove. He's the pinnacle of his field. He's like a emperor of Alabama. All these businesses, all these car dealerships he has, all the commercials. He could pick up a TV job tomorrow and be kind of the highest paid college analyst. I mean, can you imagine the folks that would want to tune in to see what Coach Saban thought about a game? I mean, my goodness, and be able to spend time with his family and loved ones, and why not? And I think coaching is a profession that's 24/7, 365. Entrepreneurship is a profession that's 24/7, 365. I think sometimes we aspire to live a world where we're done at 8:00, because there's some professions where that's a pipe dream. And so when you get that opportunity to finish early and now have the valuable time with your family, kudos to Nick Saban. He gets to be a grandpa, he gets to be a husband, and live quality life and leave a personal legacy. So I think it should be really celebrated.
Were you going to say something, Ryan?
I was just, when you were talking TV, I was just saying it's already rumored he's going to take over for Corso on College Game Day. So,
that'd be good. And the good thing about TV is it's only Friday and Saturday. You leave Friday, you do Saturday, you're back home, so you're there for that works out too. And I will end it on this. We'll end it on this one. My wife tells me if I ever get an opportunity, that is the last opportunity. We're not doing this football thing anymore. Like if you get an opportunity and it goes for a long time, and once you're fired, you're done. So I mean that gives you an idea, because you could get up, like you're talking about, like I'll just give you an example. Let's just say right now I get a call and I have to go to Kansas. We'll just pick a random place. I go to Kansas. I got to go right now. She has to stay, and we're talking about her staying with a 16-month-old, and she's expected in March, and she has to stay all the way until probably like the summer and hold the house down. You know what I mean? Like people don't understand that part. Now think about it. If they were both 2 or 3 and they're in school and she's doing all that by herself while I'm out in Kansas coaching, and then she can't come to the summer school or uprooting kids in school. So like everybody doesn't get that part about coaching. They love the idea, but they hate the reality. And the reality is not great. You know what I mean?
No, so coach, I mean, and you're the coach here, obviously. I can only sort of speculate from a third-person vantage point here, but when you were describing, obviously so many stories there, but the one person kind of in our recent universe here that we've been talking about, part of USC football, that kind of popped into my mind as you were talking was D'Anton Lynn. If you recall how he got hired, and then within 6-8 hours, he's in one state, and then 6 hours later, he's in another state. And that, he's sort of on the fly, that he couldn't even really meet, the rest of the, the SID staff and the rest of the program for 10 days, 14 days until he got back. And so I don't know Coach Lynn's sort of personal life, whether he's married or whether he has kids, but I can only imagine if and when that becomes a reality for him. My goodness, it's just it's a different world. So much sacrifice that come from the spouses and the children. And, when you get the opportunity to pay that back, in the folks that are fortunate enough to have the time to be able to pay that back, because everyone thinks, money and championships, those are all things you can get back. Like, you can lose a championship and come back the next year and win it. You can lose money and come back and get money, but the one thing that you can never get back is time. Yep. And so for so many people, time is the most precious commodity there is in life. It's not success. It's not money, because it's the one thing that you can never get back. And so for those coaches that aren't fortunate enough to be on the other side of it, I mean, tragically, think of someone like an Andy Reid, for instance, who's given so much to his profession, so much to his sport. Some of the things that have unfortunately tragically happened in his family life, with losses of loved ones, you never get that back. And so if you're fortunate enough to be able to get that remaining time, you got to seize it.
Yeah. Yep, and just last thing I want to say, just because it's turning it back to LA, that's what I've always respected. I know Lincoln Riley said this in an interview. Sean McVay has said this, Rams coach, how both of them are like, I don't want to coach till I'm in my 70s or 80s. And that's not taking anything away from Saban. I don't want to sound like I'm bashing him at all, but they both have said, like, I want to hang it up, but I still have like so much time with family, with kids, with grandkids. So I think I just want to end with that, like, hats off to Lincoln Riley and Sean McVay for outwardly saying that like they're putting a shelf life on it because they value that more than maybe the on the field success.
No, but Ryan, it's so well said. And the one thing I will say, just to sort of put a slight asterisk on that, because I think it's important, is that choice comes with privilege. And Sean McVay was privileged, to be in the family that he was in, to be able to kind of get a coaching opportunity at a very young age, that opportunities that others don't get, who are more kind of self-made. Yep. Lincoln Riley, to a certain extent, was privileged to be under the Mad Hatter at Texas Tech, and then kind of given the keys to the kingdom at a very young age. And so with privilege comes that opportunity to sort of hang it up earlier. So I commend both of them for having that self-awareness, but privilege does matter in that case. And sometimes when you have done it in a self-made fashion, when you have to kind of go through those struggles, when you don't have the family, when you don't have the connections, when you don't have that door at 24, 25, 26 years old, and those opportunities come for you later, it's harder to walk away because you work so hard and it's taken so much longer that it takes more time, and you get those opportunities older. So I just want to sort of acknowledge that, because sometimes it's not always, the world isn't always fair, and kudos to McVay and Lincoln for thinking that way, but it comes with privilege.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, Saban's walking away. I will say this. Just think, so this past week was a coaching convention. Some people get hired at the convention. Just think about people who have to go straight to the school from the convention. Hey, I got to go. Don't think about those people. Like, oh, just send me some clothes. We'll take care of the rest later. So yeah, I've heard stories like that too, where like coaches got hired at the convention. They go straight to the school. They get a couple polos, and they got to get on the road and start recruiting. Like, because recruiting period opens today for high schools and stuff. So like they're already on the road recruiting. So it's a madhouse. It's crazy, but Nick Saban gets time back. 15 years to spend with his family, gets to be a grandpa. Fellas, it's been good. We enjoyed it. As always, a day late, but we're never $1 short. We're always too good.
Well done, Coach.
We're never $1 short. So,
or a day early, depending how you look at it.
Yeah, there you go. So don't forget to go to UnderdogFantasy.com or in the Google store or in the App Store and put in USC LAFB, and you get $100 match. You get to pick up to you get to cross over right now. You can do NBA and NFL. I've been dealing with that lately, and I haven't been very successful, but hopefully I hit one. but I've been mixing NBA and NFL, and hockey into it too. So if you want to get a little wild fantasy ticket going, you can get that. And don't forget, watch the playoff games this weekend. Go to your local store, get you a Stone Brewery Fight On Pale Ale. I appreciate you guys. It's always fun. The Tripod, the Bearded Bandits, back at it again. Until next time, fellas, I appreciate it. You guys know how it goes. Live free, fight on.